4 o'clock rock here on Tic Tac on a given Tuesday. I hope your July 4th was good, Bill. Bill Sharp.
Yeah, my 4th of July wasn't bad. I have to admit it was very relaxing, but I didn't go out to see fireworks. I figured I'd seen this so many years before, I kind of knew what they were going to look like, so I just kicked back, yeah.
Yeah, that's the right move. Me too. Yeah. And our little puppy, she agrees. Anyway, Bill is on leave from his special fellowship in Taiwan at Sinica.
Academia Sinica, yeah.
And that's really fabulous what you've been doing. You've been reading, writing, thinking, talking, investigating, embracing Taiwan. And he speaks Mandarin. Ni hao ma, baby.
How?
Been there for what, 6 months or since
about
January?
5 months. About 5 months now.
I'm going to be there another 5, 6 months.
Right. I'm going to be there until December. Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity the Taiwan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Taiwan Institute of Taiwan History at Academia Sinica has given me. Academia Sinica, for the folks that might not know, is a huge research institute in Taiwan. It's like a huge major university campus. There's an institute of chemistry, biology, statistical science, earth science, Chinese literature, philology, modern history, sociology, you name it, there's an institute for it. And it's very well funded by the central government. The president is appointed directly by the president of Taiwan. And I'm very glad to be there.
Yeah, I can tell. You're looking well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So you've been studying and reading and writing about these elections that took place only a few weeks ago. And that's President Tsai Ing-wen, who is now what, the president?
She's the president of the Republic of China, which is the official name of Taiwan. Nowadays, most people just refer to it as Taiwan.
Yeah.
She really, her party just a few years ago was really down. You know, some people thought it was going to go out of existence.
What do they represent?
They represent, well, some people's view would say they represent the more left side of Taiwan politics. Farmers, small businessmen, medium-sized industries, people that are not so well off, those kinds of people, as opposed to the Nationalist Party, now the opposition party, which in the past...
that was in power for a long time.
For a long time, the party of Chiang Kai-shek, which most people would say in today's world represents the interest of those that are wealthy and big companies. So there's definitely, there's a social divide.
So this is a change then. The electorate has spoken. They want somebody like her instead.
Yeah, and you know what's also interesting is the young people in Taiwan. This is a very important component of the electorate, and also swing voters. There's an increasing number of swing voters in Taiwan politics, as I think there are in democracies around the world. Certainly in East Asian democracies, swing voters are becoming more prominent.
They're not allied on one particular side or the other. They vote for the person they like.
Right. In fact, Zuri, if you have that chart that shows party tracking analysis, we could put that up and give the folks maybe a view of this.
There you go. All right.
Okay.
What is this now?
Okay. You see the line at the top. This, the green line, this represents the ruling party, the DPP. The blue line represents the Nationalist Party. And the other line represents the number of swing voters, the gray line at the top. So you can see the swing voters are just about as prominent as is the ruling party. The lines at the bottom represents the interests or the support of more minor players. So this swing voter phenomenon is very, very important in Taiwan. Tsai Ing-wen did a very, very good job in her campaign strategy of bringing the swing voters to her side, bringing the young to her side.
Sounds like Bernie Sanders.
I think she's a little bit more conservative than Bernie Sanders. And I don't really think she's a rabble-rouser like Bernie Sanders could be accused of being. I think that she's very methodical. She's shown, I think, great ingenuity in bringing about such
What's
a great...
her background?
She is she went to Taiwan National University, studied law. Taiwan National University is the best in Taiwan, hardest to get into. She then went to Cornell. She got a master's, an LLM at Cornell. And then she went on to the London School of Economics and got a PhD in international law. She is probably Taiwan's #1 trade negotiator. She negotiated Taiwan's way into the World Trade Organization. She's worked for the Kuomintang in the past, the Nationalist Party, and as obviously now is the head of the what they call the Greens, the DPP, the Democratic Progressive Party.
Have you met her?
I was supposed to meet her one time, and she canceled out at me at the last minute because there's a big leadership flap going on in the party, and she wanted to go to that. I forgave her for that.
Yeah. But you know what? We can still have her on the show by Skype. You know, you can set it up.
Right,
Bill.
right.
If you tell her it's Think Tech by Skype, she'll come.
Yeah. Actually, a few people say they can introduce me to her. I'm not. I attended this luncheon where the new deputy foreign minister was there, and he's a political appointee. He told me he could introduce me to her, and another person who's been an advisor to her said his assistant said they probably could introduce me to her. So when I go back, I'm pursuing that. That's on my calendar.
Well, you know, you were telling me about the book you were writing about the polarization of the
right.
electorate in Taiwan. Very important
Right.
global issue.
Right.
You know, visited only last week in Brexit. That was an example of of polarization. So she would be a major player to explain to you her views on that subject. Should be a big part of your book.
On Brexit.
No, on polarization.
Yeah, actually, this is where I would like to meet her, and I'd like to have a serious conversation with her, more than just a picture, nice to meet you, handshake, and see you around kind of thing. Because one of the 5 goals that she laid out in her election campaign was to reduce the polarization in Taiwan society. Now, I'd like to talk to her in some depth about how she would like to do that. I've read her book that she wrote before the campaign, and she didn't really talk too much about it there, but in other documents she did. And she said, basically, from what I can see now, she says creating a Taiwan consensus, in other words, bringing people together. And just how she's going to do that, I think there's some more questions that need answers.
I think, Taiwan has challenges right now, and we can talk about the whole panoply of challenges, we should, but just to say that on National Public Radio this morning was a very interesting article about the Scarborough Island and about the Spratlys, and China's trying to claim them, and the World Court in The Hague is about to decide the Philippines case against China, and China has said it's going to do what it's going to do. Don't give me any court decisions. I'm not going to listen to them. And so we're at a crossroads. This is an appropriate term when you're talking about the Spratly and South China Seas, isn't it?
It is a crossroads.
We're at a crossroads. The United States is at a crossroads, and I suggest to you that so is Taiwan.
Well, I think Taiwan has been at a crossroads for a while, actually. I think it's obvious that more and more people do not identify with China. More and more people identify themselves as Taiwanese. When I go different places in Taiwan and start talking to people, taxi cab drivers or whoever, I always ask them, are you Chinese or are you Taiwanese? The answer I get most commonly is Taiwanese. Some people kind of hedge on it a bit, and I think they do because they realize maybe to say you're Chinese is not politically correct right now. And they say, well, I'm somewhat Chinese and I'm somewhat Taiwanese, and they kind of hedge back and forth. Especially this sense of identity is really important. You know, when you have a society that's been suppressed for so long, be it under Japanese colonialism or, in fact, what is Chinese colonialism from the mainland in the form of the Nationalist Party led by Chiang Kai-shek, one's culture sort of gets swept under the rug, right? And starting with the era of Chen Shui-bian, he was willing to bring that culture out and make it more, make people understand their own culture. You have kids in schools in Taiwan learning about all these rivers and provinces in China, but never learning anything about Taiwan. I mean, that's the suppression of a society. I think that you see the Taiwan literature is in its infancy. Basically, it's in its infancy, and there's this new awareness coming about of, what we are Taiwanese. Now, Chen Shui-bian, as I mentioned, he, for better or worse, he's not everybody's favorite person. I do think that he went awry by getting himself involved in corruption, but he did bring out this suppressed
History, culture.
Taiwanese-ness.
I mean, that's happening elsewhere in the world too. That's another thing that's somehow, I don't know how, but connected with polarization. It's a phenomenon of the younger generation. It's a phenomenon of the kind of nationalistic feeling that you see behind Brexit and perhaps behind Scotland as well.
There's more and more attention paid to cultures, like in Taiwan. In some ways, you can draw some comparisons between Hawaii and Taiwan. I mean, in Taiwan, we have a Hawaiian community who argues for sovereignty, would like to be independent, would like to say goodbye to the U.S., aloha to the U.S. In Taiwan, there is an Aboriginal community. It's divided into different tribes. The total number might not be all that great. But certainly the government pays more and more attention to them. They have their own TV station, they have representatives in parliament. Tsai Ing-wen's party, the DPP, over the years, has not had a very good relationship with the Aborigines. And the reason for that is that Taiwanese, that is, people from China that went to Taiwan 300 or 400 years ago, before the mainlanders led by Chiang Kai-shek in 1949, 2 million or so, they had lots of issues with the Aborigines over land. They ripped off their land. It sounds like a Hawaii
Aborigines
novel.
means the people who lived in Taiwan before the Chinese came with Chiang Kai-shek.
And before the what's called the Taiwanese came to, there's a couple layers of society. There's the 2 million mainland Chinese that went to Taiwan from mainland China in 1949, okay? And then there's the Taiwanese, which originally were Chinese. They came from coastal China 300 or 400 years ago. They had trouble getting along with the Aborigines because they were stealing their land. Sounds a little bit like Hawaii, doesn't it? So the relationship between Taiwanese and Aborigines has never been very good. Whereas on the other hand, the Nationalist Party, Chiang Kai-shek, was very good at cultivating relations with the Aborigines. But this is beginning to change statistically, slowly, but I think surely.
Change how?
The DPP, which is mostly supported by Taiwanese people, are reaching, especially led by Tsai Ing-wen, are reaching out to the Aborigines, reaching out. And in the last election, you could see some statistical evidence, minor at this point, of Aborigines beginning to vote for the DPP rather than the Nationalist Party.
Well, Tsai Ing-wen is really a turning point of sorts politically. And right after this break, Bill, we're going to talk about what challenges she faces.
Okay.
Political challenges,
Okay.
economic challenges, social challenges, and the challenge to democracy right now.
That
in
sounds
Taiwan.
good.
So
That sounds
exciting,
good.
I can hardly wait. But we're still going to take a break.
Welcome to ThinkTechHawaii.com. This is Johnson Choi, your host. The topic is Asia in Review. We do it on monthly basis on Thursday at 11 o'clock. Be sure to check the schedule. See you.
Hello, I'm Crystal from Quack Talk. I've got a new show here. You've got to tune in. Check out my topics on sensitive, provocative female issues. So Tuesday mornings, 10 o'clock. Don't miss it. It's going to be fun and dangerous.
Hello, I'm Patrick Bratton. I'm a host of Global Connections. I'm also a professor at Hawaii Pacific University, and my show and some of the other things that we do is shows off the collaboration that we have between ThinkTech Hawaii and Hawaii Pacific University. So I look forward to seeing you and talking with you about a lot of issues dealing with Hawaii, the United States, and the world. Thank you very much.
Yes, a turning point with President Tsai Ing-wen. So she was only, sworn in May 20th?
May 20th.
This is just a few days ago, really.
Right.
And how has she been doing, and what has she said she's going to do, and how important is it that she do what she's going to do?
Okay, it's very important that she does what she says she's going to do. Basically, she ran on a platform focused on domestic issues, rebuilding Taiwan's economy, improving the quality of life in Taiwan, creating industries to fill in the hollowed out economy of Taiwan, where all these industries and capital have moved to mainland China. So to do this, she has a couple basic ideas. One is to create a very viable biomedical industry. Now, her vice president happened to be the former vice president at Academia Sinica. He was in charge of, or if not in charge, highly influential in developing biomedical solutions. Unfortunately, none of them have worked to date, but there's going to be a large push in this area. And I think you see that fanning out into two areas. One is the development of medical devices and also pharmaceuticals, especially anti-cancer drugs. And
Whoever wins that game is going to be very rich.
right, and Taiwan has some very, very successful researchers. Okay, the other one is a very interesting one.
Trained in the U.S.?
Yes, most of them trained in the U.S. Yeah, in fact, it's said that in Taiwan, if you really want to get ahead in areas that deal with sciences, you need to study in the U.S. If it's issues like history, humanities, maybe you can stay in Taiwan and get a PhD there. But if in technical areas, you've got to go to the U.S. Okay, the other thing that she really wants to develop is the national defense industry. There's a couple reasons for that. Taiwan can only really count on the United States for weapon sales. At least that we know of. I have some suspicion that there's some deals very secretly going on between Israel and Taiwan, but I do not know that for sure. But at least on the surface, Taiwan depends on the U.S. and it doesn't always get what it wants, and sometimes it gets old equipment.
What's the dynamic on that, Bill? Years ago, the U.S., although it couldn't recognize Taiwan per se, it would have done anything for Taiwan. And then, that seems to have changed. What do you think?
Well, I think it's probably due to the China lobby in the U.S. Congress, big business interests, with their eyes all over the China market. And also, I think that there's, China is a different power. It isn't a poor, backward place anymore. I mean, it's still poor, but it's a lot richer than it was. It's more powerful. It's got more money.
Yeah.
And it's more of a force to reckon with. 30 years ago, China was this poor, introverted place, no significant military power, no money, and nobody really cared too much about it. It's a different game these days.
Yeah. Strikes me, though, something you said a minute ago about how the industrial companies from Taiwan are moving to China. I mean, nothing happens in China without the government wanting it to happen, I would say.
That's true.
And the government wants that. Query why? Is that game playing? Is there a reason there?
I think there's a couple of reasons. They want Taiwan's technology. They want Taiwan's know-how. They want Taiwan's capital. Taiwan has over $150 billion invested in the mainland. It's created over 1 billion jobs. They definitely want that. They always talk about how Taiwan should be so grateful to the mainland. And it's true, a lot of Taiwan exports go to the mainland. But, Taiwan has also given a lot to China. Yeah, I think that needs to be kept in mind. What you're saying before, a lot of countries these days are very hesitant to do anything that will upset China. I think it's unfortunate in the sense that here you have a democracy, and a lot of democracies around the world are holding us somewhat at bay. Well, we don't want to upset China too much. We're counting on China's investment,
including our very
or China
own,
this, or China that. I mean, I think you sort of have, maybe it's the Western mindset, but I think you have to live up to your values. And I see a lot of countries sort of backing off from the values when it comes to Taiwan.
Well, it goes to this thing with the Scarborough Island it's going to be a crunch here in a week or so when the court in The Hague rules against China, but China, refuses to respect that and continues to occupy Scarborough Island and do the same kinds of things it does to take possession, create jurisdiction, so to speak, its own geography in South China Seas. And the U.S. can stand by and do nothing. The U.S. can make little sounds and still do nothing. The U.S. could have a confrontation. Where that goes, it sounds almost like Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's an interesting point. Actually, I've been pretty impressed by Secretary of Defense Ash Carter. He seems to be a person who is willing to stand up. As I mentioned before, I think Admiral Harris and Admiral Swift have taken pretty clear positions. I think that they realize that you've got to get a little tougher with China. China respects power. I mean, that might sound nasty.
Putting it another way,
it's true.
If you let China get away with this kind of thing, it'll continue to do it and more.
That's what they've been doing. There's been a Chinese policy of salami slicing, right? We do a little, we take some action, not too big, not too provocative, just a little bit, and we see how everybody responds. There's no response, we do it something else, and then we do something else, do something else. Now, I think in terms of Taiwan domestic politics, which I think is what we should be paying a lot of attention to, because Tsai Ing-wen is either going to get reelected or not elected based on her how she deals with the economy. That's the number one issue. I mean, she's got other issues, but that's
how can you deal with a hollowed out economy? Hollowed out because investment and actually manufacturing process has gone across the straits.
Well, her policy is, as I mentioned, biomedical industry, national defense industry, because she not only sees that as a way of making Taiwan less dependent on foreign arms sales, but also as a way
double
of
benefit.
Building technology in Taiwan with spin-off effect and also creating good jobs. She's very impressed by Israel. I read her book. She went, a couple years before she wrote her book, she went to Israel. She was pretty impressed by the way that the defense industries work in Israel and what the spin-off is of technical innovation. And Ma, I don't think really paid that much attention to it. He wasn't really much of a military person. He hurt the military. He set the military back quite a bit. He created a lot of problems for the military that, she is dealing with now. She's going to have to overcome.
She want to rebuild the military?
Oh, she wants to rebuild the military, yes.
But you were telling me before the show that there's a dearth of people who will actually apply toward the military academies in Taiwan.
That's true.
This creates a problem for the military.
In her inauguration speech, after her inauguration speech, she visited several Taiwan military installations, including the main laboratory for developing new weapon systems. And also, she gave a big speech at the Taiwan Military Academy in southern Taiwan just a couple weeks ago. And she talks about building pride into the military, making it a respectable career, giving people honor. I never heard Ma say such a thing, at least not in a very persuasive way. And she realizes, and she said this in her campaign speeches, she said, we have to have a military that we will never best China in terms of capital outlay, in terms of weapons development, but we have to have a credible force that will make China think very, very seriously before ever attacking Taiwan. Now, it could be that China will never attack Taiwan. There are good arguments that will try to suborn Taiwan in other ways, with other strategies. But you still have to have that defense,
integrity.
Integrity,
Yeah.
right.
But there's a problem in doing that. I mean, one is, as you told me, that the people who might serve in the military are not so interested in serving. And I really would like to know why that is the case.
I think
B is, can she change that?
Yeah, I think one thing is the public largely thinks military expenditures are a waste of money. They have, in the old days, military, this was in Chiang Kai-shek's day, the military had limitless power in civil society. Military police were all over civil society. There was this rather heinous organization called the Taiwan Garrison Command that ran all the prisons for political prisoners, had great power. People remember this. They're a little bit freaked out about the military. And even though, Taiwan has been a democracy since the late 80s, there's still some vestiges of this old military behavior. There was a very interesting case a couple months after I arrived in Taiwan, where there was a guy selling declassified documents on the internet. Declassified. Well, you get declassified documents in a library here, okay, or off the internet yourself. And the military police heard about this. They went bursting into his apartment, like in the middle of the night, no search warrant, and searched the place. They had no authority to do that. That guy shouldn't have been investigated in the first place. And if he were to be investigated, it should have been civil investigators, not military ones. This is some of the lingering mindset.
Shades of the 70s.
Shades of the past. And people see this and they get freaked out.
Yeah.
There was another case that involved a corporal that was dealt some pretty severe corporal punishment, and as a result of it, he died. And that set off a furor.
So nobody wants to go into an army like that.
Oh, yeah. So, there's got to be a lot of shakeup. What I hope is, in my heart of hearts, is I hope that a lot of the hierarchy in the Taiwan military whose mindset is in the past will retire, and younger people born and raised in Taiwan will raise in the ranks. And I think then you could have a better military.
Yeah. Well, it's a recent arrival on the democratic scene. I mean, as a democracy. It's still got the loom of China. It's got global processes that are a little threatening. And it's got the U.S., who isn't really as strong a backer as it used to be. And it's got China out there, like, all around it, taking control of things. And it's got an economy, as you said, that's been hollowed out. So, a minute left. Where are we going with this? You're in the middle of it. You're in the dynamic. You can see it on the street every day. You can talk to people. Where is Taiwan going, Bill?
Well, I hope that Taiwan gets into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because that would it would give it great trade links with other countries, and it would reduce its dependence on China. However, to do that, Taiwan has to make some pretty severe changes internally. In other words, the Taiwan market is more closed than I traditionally thought. It needs to open up more. Now, there are some trade issues, but I think the U.S. should just throw in the towel on. A few years ago, there was the beef issue. Okay, U.S. beef, have incurred trade barriers when trying to export to Taiwan. Taiwan compromised on that. The National Security Advisor had to resign because of that, but beef is now available in Taiwan. American beef is available in Taiwan. Now the pork farmers of America want in to Taiwan, but they breed their porks with this leanness-inducing additive called ractopamine. And Taiwan people are very fussy about what they eat. They're very, very fussy about health, sanitation, and that sort of thing. And they feel that this ractopamine is really not something that they should be consuming. So therefore,
but the Americans can consume it.
Yeah, the Americans. So, my feeling is, and I've heard people that have been very close to negotiations on this to say the USTR is just far too strict about this, that there needs to be some compromise. But personally, I feel like this, okay, Taiwan compromised on beef, maybe it's time for the US to compromise on pork. But there are certain states that have great number of pork farms. Senator Grassley from Iowa, for example, he's not the only one, and they put a lot of pressure, they apply a lot of pressure. And the pork lobby, as I found, is much bigger and better organized than I thought. I always knew the beef, the cattle
American
industry.
pork lobby, putting pressure on Congress.
Right.
Yeah.
I always knew that the cattle industry had huge political power. American fishing industry doesn't really have too
But
much.
I think where you're going with this is that the U.S. needs to maybe pay a little more attention. If we're not going to use our military might to defend Taiwan as we might have generations ago, then at least we can do good trade with them.
Yeah.
We can be respectful. We can be respectful of this new president, Tsai Ing-wen.
Yeah.
And we can help build the economy and help them build their, democratic foundations through trade.
Right.
Just as, as you mentioned before, China uses trade essentially as a strategic tool.
Right.
Then we should do the same thing, and we can help Taiwan that way. And that's the way we're going to have to leave it today. Agree or disagree?
Well, basically, I agree with what you're saying. I do think that the U.S. has a pretty solid defense commitment to Taiwan and probably will carry out on it, unless Taiwan does something really foolish and incite some sort of Chinese military action against Taiwan. Other than that, most people who sit in Washington and are able to watch this stuff up very, very closely, I think the U.S. will come to the assistance of Taiwan. However, I will say this in our closing 30 seconds or whatever we have. I've been upset the last couple of years. There's a very high number of spy cases in Taiwan where military officers at very high levels, admirals and generals, have been busted for spying for China. This shows
Where?
that where in Taiwan.
China
China
spying on Taiwan.
has recruited Taiwan military officers, sometimes retired, sometimes active, to spy. And I think that shows a poor morale in the military. There is some legislation pending in the Taiwan legislature right now will say, if you get busted for spying for China, you lose your pension, which I think is fine.
Yeah. Well, we have to do this again, Bill. This was too good.
Thank
It's a
you.
ripe pomegranate. There's so much material here. You can see it spread all over. Can you get a shot of all these documents on tape? That's Bill Sharp. He's our Taiwan expert and much more. He's the founder of Asia in Review.
Hey.
And as we like to say, he's our oldest think tank host.
Thank you.
You do very well for an oldest think tank host, Bill.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back with more in the meantime. Aloha and Sai Jin and
再见，
Xie Xie.
谢谢。